Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the hilo&stitch podcast. Thank you so much for joining me again. If you are new to the podcast, as you probably are because this is only the second episode, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope I will have lots of interesting stuff for you this week. I have a recap of Vogue Knitting Live, which I attended a couple weeks ago. And then I have another Adelante segment, which is where I talk about upcoming designs. And then I have a bunch of new segments. So we have my empty wallet, where I talk about all of the yarn or project bags, fiber art supplies, etc. that I have purchased. And now my wallet is empty. We have me and my bright ideas, where I talk about something incredibly stupid that I have done, knitting related, of course. And then have a little bit of a review segment called Grab Your Credit Card, where I'm going to tell you about 2 things that you definitely want to have in your life. One of them knitting related, and one of them not so much knitting related. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The first thing I wanted to tell you about is Vogue Knitting Live. This is my first time going to Vogue Knitting Live. I went to the one in New York City, obviously, which just happened, I guess, about 2 weeks ago-ish. So I took the train up from Baltimore, and that's about a 3-hour train ride. I think there is a faster train, an express train, but this was not. This was just the regional train. And I noticed while I was on it that the train actually goes all the way up to Kingston, New York, which is near Rhinebeck. So the kids, I think, would love to ride the train to Rhinebeck, but it actually, for a family of 4, would be far too expensive, unfortunately. That's too bad. They're both obsessed with trains. But for me, going up to New York City, the train was great. I did not have to drive or park in New York City. I did not have to deal with the hassles of flying to New York City, which is, I think, more trouble than it's worth. So a 3-hour train ride dumped me right out at Penn Station, and I could walk both to the hotel where Vogue Knitting Live was held and to my hotel. I had opted to stay at a different hotel that was just a bit cheaper. I think if I had it to do over again, I would probably stay at the same hotel for the convenience, and also I think the ability to sort of connect with more people. If you're right there in the hotel, you can, go up and down as you please to your room, take a break and come back. And it wasn't a long walk. It was less than a mile. But it was really cold, especially the first day. So basically, once I walked from my hotel to the Vogue Knitting Live hotel, I was going to stay there for hours and hours and hours until I was ready to walk back. So Vogue Knitting Live, I arrived on Friday around noon, and when I got to my hotel, they gave me an early check-in, which was really nice, so I could check in right away. I had planned to just drop my bags off in the lobby and then maybe head over to the Marriott Marquis where Vogue Knitting Live was, but I didn't have to. I got an early check-in so I could settle in and get unpacked. And I had signed up for a lecture with Nora Gaughan at 2. It was not a class, it was just about a 1-hour lecture where she shows some of the programs and apps that she uses to create her patterns. And I love Nora Gaughan. She's just like the queen of cable knitting. And so I was really just kind of interested to hear how she does things. I definitely got some interesting ideas, but unfortunately she works on a Mac and I work on a PC. So a lot of the software and the programs that she uses don't really work for me. But I'm sure there are sort of similar programs on PCs that would do function mostly the same way. So it was very interesting, but I was really surprised with the way that she does her charts. It just seemed really labor intensive and not particularly time efficient, but you know, if that works for her, good for her, but that it definitely wouldn't work for me. And I'm very happy with the program that I use for charting, which is called Stitch Fiddle, and it's an online app that there's a free version. I pay $20 a year, and it does everything that I need it to do. But I guess if I were in Oregon and creating all these, you know, fancy cables, maybe it wouldn't quite be sufficient. But it works good for me, and definitely less time consuming than how she does her charting. But it was still interesting to go to the lecture nonetheless. So I went to that at 2 o'clock, and then after that I went to the hotel lobby, which inexplicably is on the 8th floor. Seems like an odd place to have the lobby. And there's a restaurant and 2 bars there. And one bar I don't think I ever saw open. I'm not sure. And the restaurant I did not try. But I did go to like the bigger bar. I sat down and had a beer and hung out, just kind of hoping to see some other knitters. But since it was Friday, there really were not too many. So I just hung out for a while. So I think the marketplace opened around 6:30, 6 or 6:30. I could be wrong. Maybe that's the time I got there. I think the marketplace opened at 5, and I decided to go over there at 6:30. And I got to walk around when it wasn't too crowded. I didn't really do a lot of shopping on Friday night. I just was kind of scouting things out, which was nice to be able to do when there weren't too many people there yet. I did see Damie and the ladies from Selvage Knits in the Magpie booth. And they had a nice big booth and lots and lots of beautiful yarn. But my goal for Vogue Knitting Live was to only purchase yarn that was from dyers I had not actually used before, which really didn't narrow it down as much as you might think. There were a lot of really interesting new dyers and like just gorgeous booths. So Friday mostly was kind of scouting things out. And then I went back to my hotel. And Saturday I enjoyed a little bit of time to sleep in. I didn't have to jump out of bed at 7 o'clock. So I had sort of a relaxed morning. And headed over to the Marriott Marquis, I think around 10:30, which is when the marketplace opened. I was amazed how it was really crowded. I guess I shouldn't have been too amazed, but it was really like hard to move, and certainly some booths were almost impossible to get into. Brooklyn General Store was absolutely crazy. And so just some of the more, I don't know, the booths that had sort of a lot going on, because a lot of the booths were just single dyers and just had yarn, but some of the booths that had lots of stuff going on, you know, bags and yarn and t-shirts and whatever, those were pretty crowded. And then some of the booths were just very small, so they were harder to get into. So I did a little bit of shopping Saturday morning, grabbed a really terrible sandwich for lunch at the hotel, because again, I had thought, oh, I'll just go out and get some lunch, but then I had to deal with the coat check thing. So just grabbed a tuna sandwich from like the Starbucks. And then I went to my class with Franklin Habit on steeks and zippers. Franklin's class was about crocheted steeks, which I had tried once before with some success. They weren't a total disaster, but I felt like there were threads escaping and things I didn't really want going on. I had dropped a stitch somewhere along the way, so I thought maybe I had just kind of done that based on videos, YouTube videos, and I thought maybe if I took an in-person class, that would be more helpful. So the homework I had done on the train, which was to knit up a swatch with sections in it to practice the steeking. And then he gave a lot of great background information, and then crocheting the steeks and cutting them was actually pretty easy. I'm not really a crocheter, but I can do sort of a basic stitch, whatever it's called, chain one, I don't know. So that part was actually fine. I did that part just fine, and then he spent like it was a 3-hour class, and I think the last hour on sewing in a zipper, which is what I was really interested in because I don't sew, and I have at least one sweater that I knit for the boys that was supposed to have a zipper, and I just never sewed it in. I had no idea how. So that was really, it was just like a basic, stitch, but he really showed us how to do it simply but neatly, and how to adjust the size of the zipper if necessary. So that was really, really helpful. So I think I learned a lot. And he's a great teacher, and he's funny, and also brought some like really nice samples of his to class to show that were just really nice to look at. So I was really glad I took that class. And now I feel more confident doing steeks and maybe sewing in a zipper. Maybe I will find that sweater probably still fits my youngest son, so maybe I can finally actually sew the zipper into it. So yeah, that was a really good class. Definitely, if you have a chance to take a class with Franklin Habit, I would do that. So then after that, I think I stopped by the marketplace again briefly, but I was just tired. So I grabbed some dinner at the bar. Well, not really dinner, truffle fries. They were very good, but not really dinner. And then I headed back to my hotel. I went to this event by myself. I don't have a lot of real life fiber friends, and so I did see some people to say hi to, but nobody that I'm like very close with. So it was kind of on my own. So I went back to my hotel and just rested a bit. And then the next morning was Sunday, so I got up a little earlier, left my bags in the hotel lobby, and then headed back to the marketplace to do some of the real shopping. Finally got to go into the Brooklyn General Store booth and do the last of my shopping, and then headed back home. So it was a fun event if you like spending money on yarn. I don't think it's as good as events like Maryland Sheep and Wool or Rhinebeck for meeting, other knitters and getting to chat, because there's just not a lot of space around for that. So I think fiber festivals and then just more open and outdoors, and I think I like the environment better, and also they're cheap. But it was definitely interesting to experience at least once. I don't think I'll be in a rush to do it every year. But it was fun, and I bought a lot of yarn, and we'll talk about that in the next segment, which is my empty wallet. Okay, so as you might imagine, I bought a lot of yarn at Vogue Knitting Live. I didn't go to Rhinebeck last year, which is one of the reasons I decided to go to Vogue Knitting Live, and actually was pretty reasonable about yarn buying last year, so I thought I could splash out a little bit at Vogue Knitting Live. But like I said, I tried to buy only yarns that I haven't used before, or from dyers I haven't used before. So I'll just give you a look at everything. Okay, so the first skein is from Less Traveled Yarn. I looked for them like on Instagram, which is my primary social media network, and didn't really find them. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that. Let's see, it says hand-dyed in Phoenix, Arizona. Merino from Argentina. So this is a sock yarn, merino nylon. And this colorway is called Bandito. So this one, I don't know what it's going to become. Probably just some socks. One of these days down the road. But I loved like sort of this is from their creosote collection, so it's very earthy, and I really liked the combination of colors here. Then let's see, I bought this skein in the Starlight Knitting Society booth, which I'm going to assume is a yarn shop. It's not a dyer, because they had a whole bunch of different dyers there. They also had these gorgeous project bags from Twill and Print that I am now desperate to get my hands on, but I couldn't quite swing the price there, but that's going to be on my wish list for any gift giving events this year. So this skein is from 6 and 7 fibers. I had a really hard time choosing yarn because all of the yarns from 6 and 7 fibers were beautiful, and there was a whole collection of Harry Potter colorways. The one I liked the most was Hogwarts: A History, but they were all beautiful. But I really liked, this one is called Nectar, and this is a single ply merino. So you can see it's like a sort of a pinky orange with lots of purples and browns mixed in, so maybe a shawl someday, who knows. Then I stopped by Asylum Fibers, which was very popular there. And to be honest, I mostly bought this skein of yarn for the color name, which is You Pansy. So let's see, this is their 100% superwash merino sock yarn, 438 yards. So that's a nice put up for a sock yarn. They had all kinds of sort of bright colors and speckles, and you know, everything is sort of like crazy themed because it's called Asylum Fibers. So the name of this base is Madhouse, and you can see the Embrace Your Crazy. So this is a fun one, nice and speckled. So it's probably not going to interfere too much with any stitch pattern or anything. So we'll see whether this will become a shawl or socks or just sit in the stash for a while, who knows. All right, so then the next yarns I bought are sets that I bought to go together. This one I'm going to mispronounce because I haven't taken French since college. Biche et bouche, boucher, I don't know. Anyway, Le Petit Lamb's Wool. So this is, and they don't have like fancy colorway names, it's just called blue-green. Vert bleu. This one is Le Petit Lamb's Wool, so this is just 100% lamb's wool from Scotland. This one is Le Cashmere and Lamb's Wool, so this one has a little bit of cashmere worked in. And I got them because they just, they're so, it's going to be really hard to show you on here. They look so perfect together because this blue is reflected in this tan. There's just little blips of it, and I know it's going to be really hard to see. Maybe you can see it a little bit here, but they just go together so perfectly. They're actually two different weights, but they, I think, are close enough that I could use them together. What am I going to use them for? I don't know. But something. A hat? I don't know. But they're so beautiful together, especially this brown with the blue. I love that. All right, and my next set is from Little Fox Yarn. And I got this is Vixen, which is merino silk fingering weight. So you can see blue with some browns, purples mixed in. And then I got a skein of mohair in a complementary blue to go with it. Yeah, it's mohair and silk. So they're both, this one is 459 yards and this one is 400. So they just pair up so beautifully, and definitely this is going to be some kind of shawl design eventually. I don't know what. I don't have any actual like concrete plans for it, but they're so beautiful together, and I think this is just going to be amazing together someday. And then the last set of yarn I got is from Primrose Yarn Company. I actually bumped into, I don't remember her name, the woman that owns Primrose Yarn, at India Untangled Rhinebeck a couple of years ago in the skeiny dipping booth, I think, because she was carrying an Orioles handbag, and I loved it. And she was not like super famous then, so I was just like talking to her about her handbag. I didn't really know who she was, but she was just kind of starting out then, and then since then she has exploded and her yarn is everywhere. So I got these two skeins. This is her Adelaide base, which I love. This one is called Acorn, and this one is Winter Wheat. And you can see that they go together beautifully. And so they will also someday be a two-color shawl of some kind. I don't know if it'll be a design or if I'll use it for, you know, someone else's pattern. Wouldn't that be delightful? If I use someone else's pattern for a change. They're both single plies, and this is such a nice combo. Her booth was huge. I mean, I guess she rented like several booths together to make this. And she just had so much yarn. Assuming that she doesn't dye it all herself, but there was just so much of it. And she had all kinds of, you know, kits for new patterns from Hilo and Caitlin Hunter, and it was an amazing booth. So that's it. That's all of my beautiful yarn from Vogue Knitting Live, and now my wallet is very, very empty. Okay, and now we are going to talk about my bright ideas, which is to say, my not so bright ideas, which seem to happen a lot in knitting. I was recently approached by I Like Knitting magazine about a design I published with them in 2016, the Boardwalk Tee, and they want to sort of re-up it for their June 2019 issue. The editor asked me to re-energize it somehow, you know. She suggested, you know, working with a different yarn or changing up some of the striping patterns, you know, something like that. Maybe work at a different gauge. And this is a tee design that is knit in cotton, Pima cotton. Pima cotton's a little heavy, so what I thought would be a good idea was to use another kind of summer yarn. But I'm not familiar with a lot of summer yarns. You know, cotton is obviously good. There are some other options, but not, I don't knit a lot of that kind of stuff in the summer. So I wasn't really familiar with a lot of other options from this Pima cotton I had originally used, but I had remembered from going to TNA a couple of years ago that Louette was interested in providing yarn support to more independent designers. And I also remember that we had gotten a sample in our goodie bag of their Euroflax, which is a linen yarn. So this is 100% wet spun linen, machine washable and dryable, and it's a sport weight. So I suggested to the editor at I Like Knitting that we try changing the yarn and using the Euroflax, because I Like Knitting has you arrange your own yarn support, which is sort of a different issue. And I knew that Louette would likely be willing to provide yarn support for the design. So I reached out to them and they said yes, and we picked out some very beachy colors. This champagne and the other one is teal, which has not arrived yet because it's I guess back should be coming soon. And that was that. So I Like Knitting needs the sample by March 1st. This is like, it's like knitting with twine. All right, you can see it's rolling up a lot. I mean, it looks crunchy. It is crunchy. And, all right, so here's my washed and blocked swatch. This looks much nicer. This is drapey. You actually are supposed to machine wash and dry this. It makes it softer. But you cannot machine wash and dry a skein of yarn. So it is going to be crunchy and horrible the entire time that I knit with it. And I had to have this thing done in, whatever day this drops this week, Wednesday. I'm going to have this done in like 2 weeks. And this is as far as I've gotten because this is just really unpleasant to work with. I have to believe in my heart of hearts that it is going to turn out beautiful and be worth the pain. I mean, it's not hard to knit with. It moves quickly. It's actually very slippery, so I might have used wooden needles if I'd had them in the right size. But knitting an entire garment out of this stiff twine, it's not gonna be fun, I don't think. It's not the worst thing I've ever knit with. I mean, it's still probably not as terrible as some of those crunchy, like what is it, sugar and cream, that sort of rough cotton yarn that is usually used for dishcloths. I've definitely used that before, and that actually hurt my skin rubbing against it. So it could be worse, but this was not one of my brightest ideas. Okay, so I have a new segment for you today, which is kind of going to be a review segment. And every time I do this, I'm going to try to talk about one knitting related thing and one non-knitting related thing, because of course we're all knitting almost all the time, but not always. And we have, other things going on in our lives, kids, husbands, maybe dating, whatever. We all have other stuff going on. So these will always be things that I need in my life, and maybe you need them in your life too. So first up, the knitting thing. You need to go out and buy this immediately. This is a gauge ruler made by Acreworks. This cost, I want to say, about $16. I bought it a couple years ago, and now this is the only thing that I use for checking gauge. It has both imperial and metric, and it has, let's see if we can show you these little claws. So you put it down on whatever you're going to measure, nice and flat. You dig those claws in so it doesn't slip around, but they're certainly not sharp enough to snag anything. And then you have this window right here so that you can count the stitches in 4 inches and the rows in 4 inches. Okay, so you don't have to mark anything off. You don't have to worry about the swatch moving around when you try to switch between checking stitch gauge and row gauge. Or you don't have to worry about sort of the ruler slipping around while you're trying to count stitches. You don't have to worry about trying to count the stitches, above or below, wherever your ruler is, because you can't see through it. This is the perfect thing for checking gauge. Like I said, this is all I use now for checking gauge. Only problem I have with it is that, as you can see, it is transparent, and I tend to leave it places and then I can't find it easily because it is transparent and it blends in. So like I will, toss it on the floor if I'm sitting on the floor, and then it's, you know, it's not that easy to see when it's time to go find it again. But you definitely want this because, of course, you are checking gauge, I know, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute. This is totally worth the investment. 16 bucks, Acreworks. I'm not being paid to promote this. I bought this with my own money. Although if you would like to pay me to promote your stuff, get in touch. Okay, and so then thing number 2 that I am going to suggest you go out and buy immediately is this. If you lived through the late 90s and early 2000s, you will remember that we basically plucked our eyebrows out until we had like one line of brow hairs, you know, like barely visible to the naked eye. That was the trend then. The problem is that the trend now is heavier brows, and if you're like me, your brows never really grew back in after all of that plucking in the early 2000s. So it does not help that despite the fact that I now need to color my hair to keep it blonde. I am a natural blonde, so my eyelashes and eyebrows are naturally lightly colored. So they're very light brown. And in the summer it's worse. They turn blonde almost, and then it looks like I have no eyebrows at all. So if you are like me and you would like to have visible eyebrows, this is an excellent investment. This is called More Brows. I got it from Birchbox. I get, you know, a box of samples every month to try, and have found a few things that are definitely worth it. And I don't know if you can buy this elsewhere. I didn't actually look, but you can buy it directly from Birchbox. I believe it comes in 2 shades, so this is light medium, and then there's a medium dark. And so this is, you know, if you are usually like penciling and shaping and you've got the stencils, and this is not for that. This is for a very quick way to make it look like you have eyebrows. It has a teeny little spoolie, you can see there. So it goes right over your eyebrows, and it has this cream-ish kind of thing that has little tiny fibers in it. So they stick to your eyebrows and just make them thicker. It's not going to give you like a really precise shape. It is not going, you know, if you see some celebrities and they've got like 6 inches of eyebrow drawn on, it's not going to do that. It's not a pencil. It's not going to color your skin, but it's going to stick to the eyebrows that you have and make them thicker and a little bit darker so that it looks like you have eyebrows. So this is, you know, if I'm going out on an evening, a nice date or something like that, I put a little more effort into my eyebrows, and I do fill them in with the pencil and all that. But for everyday use, quick makeup like today, just brush this on. Sticks to your existing eyebrows, makes them look just a little bit heavier, or in my case, visible. It is totally worth the money. And even my sample, this tiny little sample that I got from Birchbox, which was like half this size, if not less, lasted me for a couple of months. So this is called More Brows. Definitely check it out. Definitely need both of those things in your life. Okay, I just have a quick adelante segment for you today. I had done 3 design submissions in January, which is when a designer responds to a call for new designs, new patterns from a magazine or a third-party publisher. So I had done 3 of those in January, and one of them was accepted. So I'm going to have a design coming out in a popular knitting magazine in their winter issue. I know it's currently winter, so this would be, I guess, for, I don't know if they call it winter 1919 or winter 2019 or winter 2020. It would be coming out in late 2019. So I can show you the yarn for it, which has already arrived. Because even though it is currently winter, I have to have this pattern and sample done by the end of March, which is not that far away. So this is Watershed yarn from Harrisville Designs. It's 100% pure virgin wool. Yeah, this smells like a sheep, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like, it just smells very like they took it from the sheep and, you know, washed it and processed it, but it doesn't smell like dye. It doesn't smell like the things that you set the dye with. It doesn't smell like detergent. It just smells like very fresh, like it came right off the sheep. And actually, I had used this colorway, driftwood, for a capelet design that I did for I Like Knitting last year. But this is a heavier yarn. This is the Watershed. So that is going to be a pullover design. And I have my little swatchy here. It's upside down. So this is, it's going to have a lot of stockinette, the pullover design. And you can see a little bit up close. There we go. You can see just the slight variations in this color. Probably should have painted my nails before doing this, huh? It's like grays with just little blips of red and blue and purple in it. So this is going to be the main color, and then this purpley red is going to be a contrast color. It's not really color work. It's primarily this with some pops of color at the cuff, hem, and collar. So like I said, that is going to be for winter 2019/2020, and you'll be seeing that at the end of this year. And then the very last thing that I want to tell you guys about today, before I wrap up, is that enrollment is now open for my Swatch Master e-course. This is the first e-course that I developed. This is going to be the second run of it, but this is the first e-course that I developed, and I offered it last spring, so it's been about a year. If you participated in the Swatch Scholar Challenge over the last month, this is the natural continuation of that. It is called Swatch Master, and it is all about swatching, but what it's really about is learning to create a great foundation for your knits, and especially sweaters. So it's not just how to knit a swatch, it's how to knit a swatch flat, and how to knit it in the round, and how to check your gauge accurately in not just stockinette, but in over stitch patterns, how to make adjustments for your gauge if necessary, how to use swatches to determine the right fibers and the right needles for your project. So it's called Swatch Master, but it's not just about swatching. It really is about making sure you are set up for a successful project, and swatching is a part of that. I know none of us like swatching, but it is a part of that, and it's a course that's going to teach you how to use the swatching. It's going to teach you the swatching skills and then show you how to use them to make sure that your projects will be successful. So enrollment is now open. The class itself is going to start on March 4th. It is $40 for the 4-week class, and this is all online, of course. And for this first week that enrollment is open, there is a 25% discount when you sign up. So it's actually only going to be $30 for the 4-week course. So the 4-week course includes over 4 hours of instructional videos, a workbook, a Facebook group just for Swatch Master students, and in the Facebook group we have a weekly live chat where I try to answer your questions, or just help you through, whatever the assignments are that week. And then there's a few bits of bonus materials thrown in as well. So if you don't swatch, or you hate swatching, or you'd like to learn more about swatching, this is going to be a great course for you. And It's also actually a pretty good precursor course to the second e-course that I am currently developing and will probably be sharing more about later in the spring. But I will offer a second e-course in the fall that's going to be a nice segue from Swatch Master. So I hope you'll check it out. You can find more information at mediaperuana.com/swatchmaster. All right, so that is about all I have for you guys in this episode of Hilo and Stitch. Thank you so much for joining me. If you would like to see future episodes, you can subscribe directly on YouTube to my channel. You can also point whatever podcast aggregator you use to my feed over on Libsyn. You can also find Hilo and Stitch on iTunes, and I believe Stitcher as well. And if you are using any of those platforms and can leave a review, that's really helpful for me and so that other people can find the podcast. If you would like even more Hilo and Stitch, you can sponsor Media Peruana Designs on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can support my design business, and you will get bonus episodes every month of the Hilo and Stitch podcast. You also can get lots of other fun perks depending on the sponsorship level you choose. So if you want to find more information about that, you can head over to patreon.com/mediaperuana. As usual, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Ravelry as Media Peruana. And I will see you next time.